The evening air in Seattle carried a chill. But inside Emily's home everything was warm, bright and alive. Her 35th birthday had arrived, and her closest friends had gathered to celebrate. The living room glowed with golden lights strung across the walls. Balloons floated near the ceiling, and the faint scent of vanilla cake mixed with the laughter of people who had known her for years. Emily moved through the room with ease, thanking friends, laughing at old jokes, and raising her glass to little toasts that came her way. She had never been one for grand celebrations, but this year her friends had insisted. They said she deserved to be reminded how much she mattered. So here she was, surrounded by familiar faces, smiling in ways that felt genuine but also carried the weight of quiet loneliness she had learned to live with. Daniel stood near the kitchen doorway, his tall frame relaxed, a half-smile on his face as he watched the evening unfold. He had been Emily's friend since college, the one who had carried boxes up the stairs to her first apartment, the one who fixed her car when she couldn't afford a mechanic, and the one who listened when her heart was heavy with stories of relationships that never lasted. To everyone else, he was just part of her circle. But to Emily he was steady ground, reliable and constant. The party grew louder as the hours passed. Friends told stories of old road trips, embarrassing moments, and the time Emily had tried to cook Thanksgiving dinner only to set off the smoke alarm. The room burst with laughter as she playfully covered her face. Shaking her head, Daniel laughed too, though his eyes never left her for long. There was something about the way she glowed tonight, something that made the noise of the room fade every time he caught sight of her smile. When it came time for the cake, everyone gathered around the table. The lights dimmed slightly as the candles flickered. Emily closed her eyes, made a wish she would never speak out loud, and blew them out to a chorus of cheers. Someone teased her about wishing for love, and she laughed it off. But deep down, the words struck something tender. She had long ago stopped believing wishes like that came true. The cake was cut. Glasses were filled again, and music played from the speaker in the corner. Some danced, some talked quietly in groups, and Emily drifted from one friend to another, always warm, always kind, yet always carrying a distance only she could feel. She glanced at Daniel once across the room. He was talking with her coworker, nodding politely, but his eyes flicked toward her as if pulled by something he couldn't resist. Hours slipped by quickly. The laughter grew softer, and one by one, her guests began to leave. Hugs were exchanged at the door. Promises to meet again soon were spoken, and the house slowly emptied until only a few coats remained hanging by the door. Emily stood in the quiet hallway, smiling as she waved the last group of friends goodbye. The house fell into a hush, broken only by the sound of rain beginning to tap against the windows. She turned to see Daniel still standing there, leaning against the doorway with his hands in his pockets. "You don't have to stay, you know," she said lightly. Trying to sound casual, he smiled faintly. "I know, but I thought I'd help you clean up. Like always." It wasn't unusual. He had stayed after parties before, helped wash dishes, gathered plates, and carried garbage bags out. But tonight there was something different in the way he lingered. Something in the silence between his words that made Emily's chest tighten. She nodded, pretending not to notice. "Fine, but I'm not paying you in leftover cake this time." He laughed softly. "That's the only reason I came." She rolled her eyes and moved toward the living room. Picking up empty cups and stacking them, Daniel followed, folding napkins and gathering plates. For a while, the silence was filled only by the small sounds of cleaning, the rain outside, and the faint music still playing from her phone on the counter. Emily felt restless. Her friends' voices still echoed in her head, but the room seemed too quiet now. She found herself stealing glances at Daniel, wondering why he looked thoughtful, almost heavy, as if carrying words he hadn't spoken. She sat down briefly to catch her breath, brushing her hair back. Daniel walked past her with a small pile of cups, and for a moment their eyes met. She looked away quickly, her heart beating faster for reasons she couldn't explain. It wasn't that she hadn't thought of Daniel before. Of course she had. There had been moments, small flashes in time, when she wondered what it would be like if things between them were different. But she always buried the thought, reminding herself that he was her friend, her constant, the one person she couldn't risk losing still. As the house settled into quiet, as the decorations sagged a little with the weight of the night, Emily felt something she hadn't felt before, a question pressed against her heart, one she was afraid to ask. Daniel broke the silence first, his voice softer than usual. "You had a good night, didn't you?" She smiled faintly. "I did. Better than I expected." "You deserve it," he said simply. No hesitation, no joke hidden in his words. She looked at him then, really looked, and saw the sincerity in his eyes. It startled her, not because it was new, but because she suddenly noticed how deeply it had always been there. The rain grew heavier outside, streaking the windows. The warm lights reflected in the glass made the room feel like a world tucked away from everything else. And Emily realized they were alone now. Completely alone. Her heart raced in her chest, a quiet storm rising inside her. She didn't know what Daniel wanted to say, but she felt it coming. She could almost hear it in the way he lingered near her, in the way his smile didn't quite hide the weight in his eyes. And in that moment, she understood that the night wasn't over. The party had ended, the guests had gone, that the real story was just beginning. Because Daniel hadn't stayed just to clean up. And Emily knew, without him saying a word, that he carried something far heavier than a trash bag or a stack of plates. She didn't know what the words would be, that she felt them hovering, waiting, and part of her, the part that had always longed for something steady and true, was both terrified and ready to hear them. The house was quiet now, the laughter and voices gone, replaced by the steady rhythm of rain against the windows. Emily moved slowly through the living room, gathering empty plates, stacking cups, and folding blankets left behind on the couch. The golden light still glowed softly across the walls. But without the noise of friends, the place felt too still, almost like the air itself was waiting. Daniel worked beside her, moving without much sound. His tall frame shifted from table to counter, his hands busy with small tasks. Yet Emily noticed how often he paused, how his eyes lingered on her before quickly turning away. It was not unusual for him to help her after a gathering, but tonight carried a weight she couldn't name. She tried to fill the silence with small words. "You don't have to keep cleaning, Daniel. I can finish this later." He glanced at her and shook his head lightly. "I don't mind. It's better than going home to an empty apartment." She laughed softly. "You and me both." For a moment that laugh eased her nerves. But it didn't last. Daniel's voice was calm, yet something about the way he said things made her chest tighten. She felt as if the night had turned into a bridge, one she was about to cross without knowing what was on the other side. Emily set down the last of the plates and sat on the edge of the couch, brushing her hair from her face. Daniel gathered the napkins in his hands, then stopped halfway, standing there quietly. She looked up, surprised to see him frozen like that, his expression caught between hesitation and determination. "Emily," he said softly. Almost as if testing how her name would sound in the silence, she raised her brows. "Yes." His eyes met hers, steady but unsure. "I've been holding something back for a long time." Her heart stumbled. She forced a smile to cover the rush of nerves. "You sound serious." He nodded. I am. She felt her hands grow restless in her lap. Her body tense though she didn't move. What is it? She asked, her voice low. He exhaled, a sound mixed with relief and fear. All these years I've stood by you. I've watched you smile at the wrong people. I've seen you give your heart to men who didn't deserve it. And every time, I stayed silent because I thought it wasn't my place. His words were measured. But beneath them was a crack, a truth breaking free. Emily blinked, unsure if she had heard him right. Daniel, she whispered. He didn't stop. I can't do it anymore. I can't stand in the background pretending I don't feel what I feel. The truth is, Emily, I've loved you, not for a moment. Not for a passing season, but for years. The room seemed to still completely. Even the rain felt quieter against the glass. Emily's pulse raced so hard it echoed in her ears. She wanted to speak, to say something, but her throat tightened, and no words came. Daniel took a slow step closer, not too near, just enough for his voice to carry deeper. I never wanted to risk losing you. You're my best friend, the one person who has been my constant. But every year that passed, every birthday I watched you celebrate, I realized the silence was becoming heavier than the fear of losing you. Emily's eyes filled with tears before she even realized. She blinked them back quickly, looking away as if the sight of him would make her break. Her heart swelled with emotions she couldn't sort through. The years of their friendship flashed in her mind: college study nights, moving apartments, quiet drives, long talks on rainy evenings, and suddenly all those moments carried new meaning. She stood quickly, pacing a step toward the window, her voice shaking. Daniel, I don't know what to say. The words tumbled out. Unsteady and broken, she pressed her hand against the window frame, staring at the blurred city lights beyond the rain. This is a lot. I didn't expect. I know, he interrupted gently, his tone soft. I don't expect you to answer me tonight. I don't expect you to feel the same way. I just couldn't keep it inside anymore. You deserve to know the truth. Emily turned back to him slowly. Her eyes met his again. And for the first time she saw the depth of his gaze, not as a friend's concern, but as something much deeper. Something that had always been there, quietly waiting. Her body trembled as the weight of it sank in. Why didn't you ever tell me? She asked. Her voice small, he hesitated, then said, Because I thought maybe you'd laugh, or maybe you'd pull away. And the thought of losing you, even as a friend, was worse than keeping it locked inside. The honesty in his voice cut through her. It was steady, without drama, but it carried years of silence, years of watching her from a distance. Emily walked back to the couch and sat down, her legs weak beneath her. Daniel followed slowly. Standing near but not too close, he wanted to reach for her hand. But he didn't. He let the space remain, letting her breathe, letting her choose. Her hands twisted in her lap, her voice barely a whisper. You've loved me all this time, and I didn't see it. He smiled faintly, sadness and hope mixing together. Maybe you weren't supposed to until now. The words made her chest ache. She thought of every heartbreak she had run to him with, every time he had sat quietly beside her as she cried over someone else. And now she realized that through all of it, he had been carrying his own heartbreak. One he never spoke of. Silence filled the room again. But it wasn't empty. It was alive with everything unsaid. Emily's tears slipped down her cheeks, and she quickly wiped them away. I feel overwhelmed, she admitted. Like my world just shifted. Daniel's expression softened, his voice low. Then let it shift. Don't think about tomorrow or what it means. Just know that tonight, I couldn't leave without telling you what has been true for so long. She stared at him, her breath uneven, and for a moment she felt something inside her break open. Something she had buried for years. She realized she had always felt safe with him. Always drawn to his quiet strength. Always lighter when he was near. She had mistaken it for comfort, for friendship, when maybe it was something she had been afraid to name. The truth frightened her, but it also warmed her. It was like a door had opened, one she had walked past 1,000 times without looking. Now it was wide, waiting, and she didn't know if she was ready to step through. The rain softened outside, the city lights blurred and quiet. The glow of the golden strings of light filled the room with a warmth that felt almost sacred. Emily looked at Daniel again, really looked, and whispered, "I don't know if I can give you an answer tonight." "You don't have to," he said gently, his voice steady as ever. "Just knowing that you've heard me is enough." Her heart ached at his patience, at the way he gave without demanding, at the way he carried love not like a storm, but like a steady flame that refused to burn out. She sat there, unable to speak, unable to decide, and yet unable to forget, because the words had been spoken, and once spoken, they could not be undone. The night no longer felt like her birthday. It felt like the beginning of something she couldn't name, a turning point that would change everything. And as she sat across from him, the weight of his confession heavy in the air, Emily realized that silence could no longer protect her, because Daniel had filled it with a truth she would never be able to unhear. Emily sat on the couch, her hands trembling against her knees. The glow of the golden lights filled the room with a gentle warmth, but inside her chest a storm raged. She had heard confessions before, promises of love whispered by men who later broke her heart. But this was different. It was not rushed, not decorated with empty charm. Daniel's words were steady, carrying the weight of years, and they had landed in her heart like stones in still water, sending ripples everywhere. Daniel didn't move closer. He gave her space, his eyes resting on her with quiet patience. He had finally let out the truth, and though he stood only a few feet away, Emily felt the distance between them filled with every unsaid word of the past. The sound of the rain outside softened, and for a moment, time felt suspended. She wiped a tear from her cheek, embarrassed by her reaction. "I don't even know what to say," she whispered. Her voice cracked, not from rejection, but from being overwhelmed. Daniel nodded slowly, his tone calm. "You don't have to say anything right now. I didn't tell you to get an answer tonight. I just needed you to know." The gentleness in his words cut through her fear. She was used to confessions that demanded something in return, declarations that came with pressure, but Daniel's voice carried no demand, only truth. He was offering her something pure, and that terrified her more than anything. Emily leaned back into the couch, staring at the ceiling. "It feels like my whole world just shifted in one night," she admitted. "Like I've been walking in the dark and someone turned on a light." Daniel's lips curved into the smallest smile. Maybe that's how it was supposed to be. Her heart raced. She thought of the years she had run to him with broken pieces of herself. The times he had stayed late just to make sure she wasn't alone. The way he always listened without judgment. She realized that love had been standing in front of her all along. Patient, quiet, waiting, the realization frightened her. What if she accepted this truth and ruined it? What if she stepped into love with him and everything collapsed? She couldn't imagine losing him. Losing the one person who had never left. And yet, what if she ignored this moment and never gave herself the chance to feel what might be the love she had always searched for? Daniel broke the silence again, his voice softer than before. "I know it's a lot. I know you've been through pain. I've seen it. And the last thing I want is to add to it. I only want you to know that if you ever let me, I would never take your heart for granted." The honesty in his voice shook her. She pressed her palms together, fighting back another tear. "Do you have any idea what you've just done to me?" she asked, a fragile laugh escaping through her nerves. "I feel like I can't even breathe." Daniel took a step forward, then stopped, his hands still at his sides. "If it's too much, I'll go," he said. "I don't want to overwhelm you. I just wanted to give you the truth before another year passed." Emily's chest tightened. She didn't want him to go. The thought of him walking out that door after saying those words filled her with panic. "No," she said quickly, her voice almost breaking. "Don't go, please. Stay." Their eyes locked, and in that gaze, everything unspoken filled the air between them. Emily saw it then, the years of love hidden in his silence. The quiet way he had been hers without her knowing. And now she couldn't unsee it. She couldn't return to the way things were. She lowered her voice, barely above a whisper. "You've always been the one, haven't you?" Daniel's expression softened, his eyes shining. "Always." The word hit her with such force that she had to close her eyes. Her heart raced with fear, with longing, with the ache of realizing she had overlooked the very thing she had always needed. She thought back to every man she had dated, every time she had tried to build something real, and how it never lasted. And now she saw the truth, that the one person who had always stayed was standing right here, quietly carrying love all along. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but this time she didn't hide them. She let them fall, because they weren't tears of sorrow. They were the tears of someone who finally saw clearly. Daniel moved carefully, sitting down at the other end of the couch, still leaving a space between them. His presence was steady, calm, like he had all the time in the world. "Emily," he said gently, "you don't have to decide tonight. I've waited years. I can wait longer." She shook her head quickly, her hands trembling. "That's just it. I don't want to make you wait anymore. I don't want to pretend I don't feel it too." The words surprised her as much as they did him. They had slipped out before she could second-guess them. And once spoken, they carried a weight of truth she could no longer deny. Daniel's eyes widened slightly, his breath catching. "You feel it?" he asked quietly. Emily met his gaze, her lips trembling into a small, broken smile. "I think I've always felt it, but I was too afraid to see it." The air between them shifted instantly, not with dramatic passion, but with something deeper, something solid. Emily reached across the space between them, her hand shaking as she placed it over his. For a moment they just sat there, the warmth of her touch answering years of unspoken questions. Daniel's eyes softened as his fingers gently curled around hers. "You have no idea how much this means to me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Emily leaned closer, her tears still falling. "You've been my safe place all these years, Daniel. And I think I was too blind to realize that maybe love was supposed to feel exactly like that, safe." The words seemed to unlock something in both of them. And for the first time in years, Emily felt a peace she had never known. It wasn't fireworks or chaos. It was quiet, steady, real. They stayed like that, hand in hand, speaking only through silence. The glow of the lights wrapping around them like a blanket. Outside, the rain slowed, leaving only a faint mist against the windows. Emily knew life would not suddenly become simple. There would be questions, fears, and 1,000 what-ifs waiting for her tomorrow. But tonight, sitting with Daniel, hearing the truth she would never forget, she realized that love didn't always come with thunder. Sometimes it arrived quietly, patiently, and stayed until you were ready to see it. Her world had shifted forever. And though she didn't know where this new path would lead, she knew one thing for certain: she would never forget the words Daniel had spoken. The words that turned an ordinary birthday into the night Her heart finally found its home. And as she leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt chosen, safe, and deeply loved. And she knew that no matter what came next, the words would remain with her for the rest of her life. Because after the birthday party, she had heard words she would never forget.